There's an idea floating around that trans people were socialized as the gender they were assigned at birth, and that this socialization influences the way they think. As a trans person, I think this concept is unnuanced at best and flat out wrong at worst. I will explain. Socialization is the process by which we learn how to fit in with our peers. Basically, it's about learning the social rules of our particular culture. The process begins pretty much at birth, and we absorb the information both from things we're directly told and from things we observe around us. The social rules for boys and men are often different from the rules for girls and women, so socialization has a gendered component to it. Girls are specifically learning how to be girls, and boys are specifically learning how to be boys. Some folks try to weaponize the concept of socialization against trans women, claiming that because trans women grew up as boys, they would have received all the typical messages that boys got growing up, and surely must have retained them all. I think the idea here is that trans women must be entitled and misogynistic because they grew up as boys in a patriarchy. There are several things wrong with this line of thinking. The biggest is that trans women did not, in fact, grow up as boys. Being perceived as a boy by others is not the same as actually being a boy, and this is an important distinction. Obviously the same thing goes the other way too. Trans men may have been perceived as girls at some point, but they were never actually girls. And this impacts trans people's socialization process. I'll use myself as an example of how this can play out. I'm trans-masc non-binary. The doctor who delivered me took a look at my meat suit, said, "It's a girl," and put an F on my birth certificate. From that point onward, people told me I was a girl and referred to me as a girl. I took their cues and referred to myself as a girl too. However, there's a gender compass of sorts inside my brain that has always pointed in a vaguely dudeward direction. And so, when I saw societal messages aimed at boys or men, I instinctively felt like those messages were for me. Or at least, I felt like they were more for me than the messages aimed at girls and women. And without consciously thinking about it, I absorbed all available information about maleness like an impressionable little sponge.
Yeah, Yosemite Sam, the roughest, toughest He-Man, stuffest hombre has ever crossed the Rio Grande.
And then I said,
Oh my God.
I was learning by example how to be a guy in my particular time and culture, the same way I assume most boys do. At the same time, I was also learning the hard way that stuff that was cool or funny when boys I knew did it was apparently off-putting when it was done by me.
And then I said,
I realize now that the reason for this was gendered. To other people, I was a girl who wasn't adhering to the societal girl rules. At the time though, I didn't understand what was going on. I just sensed that people didn't like certain things about me, and I fixed what I could, through trial and error. Occasionally, someone would explicitly tell me to change my behavior. They might even cite gendered reasons for wanting this change. Sometimes I made the change and sometimes I didn't. There are probably more ways that people's perception of me as female has affected or changed me, but overall my socialization skewed in a masculine direction, because my gender skewed in a masculine direction. I saw the world through dude goggles by default, and thus, the cultural cues I was picking up on about how I should think, act, move, and look, were male ones. Then specific people or situations nudged some things in a more stereotypically female direction because it became clear that I needed to conform in order to survive. So basically, my internal sense of gender appears to have played a bigger role in my socialization than what other people saw me as. And I'm willing to bet that this is the case for most trans people. It's a mistake, therefore, to assume we were socialized as our assigned gender at birth. Things are far more complex than that. Before I go, I want to circle back for a minute to the idea that trans women must have grown up with a greater sense of entitlement or misogyny than other women. Hopefully by now you've deduced that trans women's innate sense of gender likely precludes this. It's also worth pointing out that many trans women were bullied, abused, or ostracized growing up for not performing masculinity correctly. In other words, they may have been perceived as boys back then, but feminine boys, which in our sexist society means substandard boys. And being treated as substandard is not conducive to believing you're better than other people or entitled to things. That's all I have to say for now. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.